curiosity is like the most important characteristic you can bring to everyday life and to the business world, everything. Because, it's very easy for a product or something to be put in front of your face and you just use it as you were instructed to do. But if you're curious about why you're doing it this way, then you become curious about, what other things are out there. So it would be a battle of curiosity versus just kind of acceptance, in a way. And I've always been building on that concept. I always had this idea, there's curiosity killed the cat. Well, in the business world or most worlds, curiosity kills the ego, because you get humbled very quickly. If you get very curious and go down a path that most haven't touched, you will be humbled many times.
Thank you for joining another edition of The Never-Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for companies running SAP. Today, we have the great pleasure of EJ joining us. EJ Kosec is a founder, a builder, and an enthusiast, and he has probably forgotten more about digital procurement and digital procurement processes than most people have ever learned. So, EJ, thanks so much for joining us today.
Sean, thanks for having me. I'm so excited. I've been very, very much so looking forward to this conversation and to be a part of Convergent.
Awesome. Thanks. Likewise. So one of the things that stood out to me is you've got this passion and you have this experience in customer delivery and implementations and in building products around procurement technology on SAP. And I have to imagine that you've learned some things that you wish you knew 10 years ago. What would you want to share with yourself from 10 years ago or other folks that are earlier in their careers?
I wish I could dump everything back to the person 10 years ago that started. One thing that I'm very proud of is that I always said yes and threw myself into the fires, and I learned so much from that. I at the time, was learning about supply chain and procurement a lot more, and really connecting with people. I just love people, and I always say I always wanted to just work connecting with people, and I happened to learn technology in the interim. But the extra emphasis on the later half of the last 10 years, those 5 years I put on the technology aspect of it and the deeper technical, architectural integrations, interoperability parts of the technology platforms and ecosystem was really where I put a lot more focus the last 5 years. And I just wanted to learn everything I could. I always want to be a sponge, but I really wanted to learn a lot on the technical side of things. And I would say that is where I'm would start 10 years ago. But honestly, I don't have any regrets. I've had an incredible career so far, just learning from different people, seeing the world, and no regrets so far on any of that.
What I love about that is there's the wisdom that comes through in, sure, the technology is interesting, but there's people. And that's got to be the focus. And whether it's human-centered approach to innovation or app house or design thinking or just emotional intelligence, this is really where a focus on people shines through. And it's also really difficult to implement or build good products if you don't like people. I think sometimes some of the solutions that are out there were built by people who don't like people, and that's why they're so hard to use.
Yeah. I mean, it's a good point. I mean, you have to put yourself in the shoes of the end user, of the company, and you can't do that off of just a note card or a Google search of what a typical buyer or supplier goes through. You have to know the person. And I spent 6 years on the ground in the field delivering SAP solutions, not just here in the US, but in China, in Brazil, in Mexico, in Russia. So I learned not just people, here in this, in North America. I learned how different cultures absorb and use technology. I've always cared about that the most. I mean, that's just kind of me. And the technical aspect, the technology aspect was just a creative path to, build something around those type of personalities and those people.
It's a bit like when you say yes and you have to figure out how to go do it. And I love the way Richard Branson encourages people to say yes and then figure out how to do whatever it was you said yes to. And some of the most amazing innovations come out of that. When you think about the saying yes, often the saying yes is go make X better. Go make this 3 times better, 5 times better, 10 times better. Whatever that is, that's really the outcome that we've got to achieve. And I keep seeing people confuse the technology or a product with the outcome. And it's so common, it's really scary. What do you see as a common mistake that you hope more people can watch out for and guard against to help make sure that it doesn't come back to bite them?
Yeah, I think curiosity is like the most important characteristic you can bring to everyday life and to the business world, everything. Because, it's very easy for a product or something to be put in front of your face and you just use it as you were instructed to do. But if you're curious about why you're doing it this way, then you become curious about, oh, what other things are out there?
Yeah.
So it would be a battle of curiosity versus just kind of acceptance, in a way. And, I've always been building on that concept. I always had this idea, there's curiosity killed the cat. Well, in the business world or most worlds, curiosity kills the ego, because you get humbled very quickly. If you get very curious and go down a path that most haven't touched, you will be humbled many times. So you have to embrace the curiosity and know that, you're going to learn a lot of things. It's going to be a steep learning curve. But as long as you always stay curious, I think it's a very optimistic, a very successful path you'll go on, as long as you're always curious, looking for, the next new thing and having fun.
Seeking first to understand.
Sure.
That curiosity versus the acceptance of, oh, I guess we've always done it that way. Also, very, very scary set of words to hear that, plays into the common mistake. When you think about the curiosity that you've brought and that natural curiosity and this emphasis on saying yes and then figuring out how to make it happen, that's a powerful, powerful combination. And, there's often a wish through that curiosity and the experience where, you wish more people saw or more people applied that combination. What else would you wish more people were able to bring to their careers to help them be a better team member, a better contributor, a better leader?
Great question. I knew we were going to be philosophical for pretty much this entire podcast, just because I know you now well enough and you know me. There is a deep collaborative aspect. Just a community is so important, and it's a different world now. So we live in a digital, virtual communities with our companies. Versus, our physical communities outside our houses. In that sense, I think it is very important that you still have these collaborative tools that you can use, and you can organize different meetings, different workshops, all of that with your group and your team. One other thing I would just say that I just don't understand how there's any avenue where this isn't successful in a business and a career is just becoming so deeply in love with your products and your customers, obviously. But if you know that product inside and out, it doesn't matter what area of the company you work in, you now are better at your job because you know the products more deeply. And I do think, in the technology world, that does get, an enterprise tech, most especially, that does get lost, and you lose the connection to the product. Knowing if a button changed from one day to the next, it's so crazy, like how excited I get to see little changes to products and being a part of that, right? Before, there were times early in my career where I didn't really have too much of that influence. Sure, I can take customer requirements and then I can, put that into a template, but actually seeing how you can change and help be a part of building a product is so important. And this doesn't apply to you don't have to be a developer to be very tightly tied to your product and have influence over your product. You can be in marketing, you can be in sales, obviously pre-sales, in delivery. Every single aspect of a company can be involved in the evolution and development of your product. And this was something that definitely clicked for me over the last 5 years. I mean, building, a platform was definitely had a big influence on that. And having the right people, just really healthy conversations around the product was always just so fun. And it's something that I will definitely be doing for the rest of my career.
I love the curiosity of how that kills ego and how that comes to help support falling in love with the problem, falling in love with the product, falling in love with the process to get you through not the process of how something's executed, but the process of all of the work that goes into making it successful. I think the trap some people fall into is this idea of falling into the outcome as the thing that people fall in love with. And then you get there and you're like, oh, okay, but what's next? And if you didn't take the time to love the process of getting there and to love all the work that had to go into making it happen, it doesn't feel the same, because that work that you're doing can really do wonders to instill the sense of worth and and reinforce the value that people are bringing into the world to go help those people. I love that. So, EJ, when you're approaching curiosity, do you have a favorite question that you love to hold in your mind, or you're really anchoring on curiosity? And it's so powerful too. Like if you focus on curiosity instead of frustration, like, recently one of my kids did something, and without going into details, would have been so easy to get frustrated at them. And instead you get, so buddy, what were you trying to do?
Yeah.
And then suddenly you realize, like, oh, he just actually really wanted to have popsicles the next day, and he thought they needed to be in the freezer all night long. And then something happened and it was past bedtime and it wasn't the right time. But like, instead of getting frustrated with him, just getting really curious about, all right, well then tomorrow morning, because we got to clean this up now, tomorrow morning we'll make some new ones, we'll put them in the deep freeze, and away we go. That difference of curiosity can get in the way of, and can stand in the way of, you going to places mentally that are unhelpful, like frustration or anger or things like that. And I think the key to unlocking more of the humility that's required to really understand and to get curious and to be open to the feedback we get is so powerful. So thank you for bringing that. I love it. What are your favorite questions to bring for holding on to that curiosity, or sharing that curiosity, inviting other people to share your curiosity as you're going through these things?
I mean, there's the standard questions of what challenges are you facing and what outcome are you looking for. I think each person you're working with, whether it's a customer or someone working in development, or, a partner, the Socratic method is very essential and different with each person. Each personality is different, and you're going to get a different personality every time. I am just kind of obsessed with learning people and trying to figure out how we, both find, that same wave, and we're both surfing on the same wave together. Not to be, like a California hippie kid, but
Surfing's
actually
awesome,
grew up in Ohio. But yeah, I can apply many things to surfing these days. But in general, the big question, and you have 3 kids, you know this, kids are actually more deeply in tune with it than us adults are, is just why. And you can ask why 100 times and you'll eventually get to a root cause, with just about anyone. So I think that's kind of the core. If I had to just say, like, what questions, it depends. Challenges are important and outcomes are important, but there's a deeper root cause even behind the challenges and the outcomes you're looking for. And if you converse and collaborate and get deep enough, then you find the answer you're looking for. Sometimes it's too deep and you're like, okay, let's reel it back. We're talking about procurement here.
Okay, that's a core memory. I'm not a therapist back. Let's get you help. But I love the idea of the curiosity, and I remember a friend told me, like, if you can explain something to your kid, and my oldest was 5 at the time, then you really understand it. As a test of, has your curiosity been effectively exercised? Can you define the problem in a way that you could explain it to somebody who's like 8 or under, or 10 or under? And that usually means that you've distilled it down enough that you really understand it. that curiosity and being able to take something that you've learned and then be able to teach somebody else, as opposed to just use it for yourself and being able to go teach others. So powerful. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna have to start pitching Convergent to your kids to make sure I'm good. They got it. Kids are so smart. It's crazy. Not to get too off track. My sister just had another child, and my nephew's 3, and I told him, "You're gonna be a great, awesome big brother." And he's like, "Well, how do I do that?" And I'm like, "Whoa, that's
Great
a deep question." Yeah,
Isn't that beautiful?
Kids are incredible. But yeah, nonetheless, the deep but simplistic understanding and conversations go a long way.
They sure do. I love it. I hope everybody has taken something from this today. A little more of a philosophical episode. Thank you for joining another edition of The Never Ending Climb for a Stronger Supply Chain and Procurement for companies running SAP. EJ, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sean.